Katrina coverage continues here on the Weather Channel, Hurricane Central.
Hurricane Katrina, a storm for the record books.
The storm surge has been much bigger than anything ever before. The result has been, in some cases, people being trapped in their homes, trapped in other buildings.
Tonight, Katrina's wrath on New Orleans. It may be weeks before life becomes easy again in the Big Easy.
Plus, in-depth coverage of Katrina's path of destruction. Find out where Katrina is now and where this monster of a storm is headed next. Well, from southern Louisiana to the Ohio Valley, Katrina is now your storm. Hi, everyone, and good Monday evening. I'm Alexandra Steele.
And I'm Paul Goodlow. Katrina has gone from a Category 5 hurricane to being now just a tropical storm. But hey, don't be fooled. Katrina is still a very dangerous storm.
You bet it is. The people of New Orleans are all too familiar with Katrina's power. The storm roared in southern Louisiana this morning as a Category 4 hurricane, knocking out windows, ripping off roofs to dozens of buildings, including the Superdome in New Orleans.
Now, the eye wall of the hurricane, areas east of New Orleans and along the Mississippi coast, now those are the hardest hit areas. Our own storm tracker Jim Cantori, he reported a storm surge of at least 27 feet in Gulfport, Mississippi, as the eye of Katrina approached.
And the storm-weary Florida Panhandle, they avoided a direct hit, but the outer fringes of the storm still closed bridges, flooded streets, knocked out power, and even eroded beaches. And we have reports of significant damage from Biloxi, Mississippi as well. The local paper reporting heavy damage along US 90. The Olive Garden and Red Lobster restaurants gone. The Edgewater shopping strip mall devastated. The McDonald's and the Village Sports Pub gone. St. Thomas Catholic Church reportedly gone as well. And the Hard Rock Casino on Casino Row in Biloxi, scheduled to open next week, will now need to be completely rebuilt. Let's go over to Paul and let's get the latest on where Katrina is now.
Alexandra, that is just amazing damage. And again, that's all because they were on the eastern side of the storm, the stronger side in terms of the surge. And even New Orleans, we're talking about this storm came awfully close, but just to your east. If this storm came to your west, it would have been even worse than it already is. It's still very bad right now in New Orleans. It'll take perhaps years for some people to recover from that damage. Right now, anytime you have a hurricane, tropical cyclone making landfall, you have the risk of tornadoes. Tornado watch still up for portions of southern Tennessee into Georgia, Alabama, even the Florida Panhandle. Right now, good news, no tornado warnings to report, but you can see another band of thunderstorms coming up. And again, they're capable of producing tornadoes with little or no advance warning, and all this moisture on the move. You see the cloud shield already in the Ohio Valley. The rain coming with you for tomorrow and tomorrow evening. So even Cincinnati, we're going to be dealing with this. Even some wind, and again, that could knock down trees, bring down power poles. So we're talking about widespread power outages, and this impact from this hurricane is going to be felt well in towards the mid-Atlantic as we head towards Tuesday and Wednesday. And we still have to worry about this heavy rain creating flood concerns. A lot of people die in these hurricanes, not from the wind. Yes, some people do, but the inland threat is freshwater flooding, and also we have the risk of tornadoes as well. That continues as this moisture moves to the Ohio Valley and eventually to the mid-Atlantic as well. Alexandra?
All right, thanks, Paul. Well, now let's get into tonight's team coverage. Of course, live reports. Mike Seidel in Mobile, Alabama. Stephanie Abrams in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. But first, Mike, let's begin with you. You know, talking to you tonight, you talked about 200,000 people without power, flooding, but that flooding receding. What's the latest now? What do you feel like the people out there are really thinking and feeling?
Well, obviously, they're going to miss their creature comforts. I know everybody wants to get the power back on, but as we heard earlier from Steve Nodine, the county commissioner, it may be as long as 2 weeks to get everybody turned back on. Virtually the entire county is without power. It's very dark down here, but the TV lights, and also we've got water everywhere. Notice we still have some breezes blowing, some of the gusts occasionally 30 miles an hour, but we've weathered the worst. And behind me, you can't see it, but the convention center on Water Street, of all things, and then beyond that is where the water came from, blown in from the Gulf up through Mobile Bay. The water is receding. At one time, we had as much as 8 feet of water down here on Water Street. Let's take you back right now to the height of the storm when it kicked in at mid-morning. It's a little after 9 o'clock here in Mobile as we get some of the worst bands so far this morning. The wind is howling right now, gusts up to hurricane force, and as you can see, Old Glory getting ripped by this wind as Katrina makes landfall over in Mississippi. It's about 9:30 in the morning. The squalls continue to come in. Woo! Boy, that's got to be close to 70 miles an hour. It just stings when it hits your face. Woo! Boy. You can hardly stand up in that gust. That's got to be at least 75 miles an hour. Wow. It's just about 10 o'clock here in Mobile, and this is the worst we've seen as far as the wind. These gusts approaching 80 miles an hour. It has, whoo, you can't even look into it. Listen to the howl of that wind. Oh my gosh. It's a little after 11 o'clock here in Mobile. We have taken some hard hits as far as wind gusts now, approaching 90 miles an hour. The rain continues to come down. We've already had 2.5 inches of rain, expectations of 5 inches or more before Katrina blows out of town. It's a little after 1 o'clock, and we're here on the other side of the building, but take a look at these gusts whipping through these trees, and that flew across the driveway here against the railing. The pool obviously is going to need some cleaning up. Look at the flag being tattered now by these winds, still running at about 60 miles an hour in gust as the rain has backed off somewhat at this point. And Paul and Alexandra, look at this debris, corrugated aluminum.
All right, thanks, Paul. Well, let's take you now back to the Gulf Coast where our own meteorologist Stephanie Abrams is in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And you know, Stephanie, we've been talking to you throughout the night, and certainly the thread of what you're saying is it could have been a lot worse for you in Fort Walton Beach. But looking around, perusing the towns, what's the worst that you have seen?
Well, I even hate to call it the worst that we've seen because it's just been road closures due to some flooding, and it's so hard to say that anything's bad or damaged here relative to what we're talking about west of me, but we do have some road closures out there due to the washover.
They could only watch and wait. Evacuees from Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama staying safe in Fort Walton Beach hotels while their homes and family were in peril.
It's frightening. I suppose buildings that you think that would withstand a great deal of wind, the Hyatt with 200 windows blown out, the Superdome with a roof problem, are all frightening. And then when I think of my home, which is at least 100 years old, more likely than not, there's a great deal of damage, I would think.
My neighbor said he's on his roof. I asked him if he was kidding. He said no, he wasn't. He's a practical joker, and I thought he was kidding, but now I'm finding out that he's telling the truth. So from what I understand, my home is 8 feet underwater.
I'm afraid of what I'm going to go home to. I don't know how we're going to get home. We've got my brother-in-law that's still in Gulfport. He didn't leave. I've got family and friends that we don't know what we're going home to, so we just fear the unknown.
Now, we do have several evacuees here. I would say almost everyone in the hotel. They did evacuate from Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and even just here where we really didn't see a very big surge or wind or rain, we still have closures. 98 is closed from Fort Walton to Destin, and the Department of Transportation is going to head out in the morning and see if that road is going to be okay. But you guys, I have to say, I mean, it's hard to say that we have any damage because there's bridges washed out west of me, there's roads completely destroyed west of me, people's lives, so we're doing just fine.
All right. Well, we're glad to hear it, Stephanie. Certainly everything is relative, isn't it?
That's right. And just ahead, we're going to talk about how the weather will actually affect your cleanup across the Gulf states over the next 7 days. Stay tuned for your weekly planner.
Well, as Hurricane Katrina roared ashore, this is the destruction it brought. Winds lashed the city. Thousands of people huddled into the Louisiana Superdome for safety, but had a bit of a scare while there. Part of the dome's roof blew off.
And it's estimated more than 5 to 8 inches of rain fell within just a few hours, and that has New Orleans flooded. Now take a look at some of these cars here. Water reached above the windows, and at one point, the New Orleans mayor reported 200 people were stranded on rooftops in the lower 9th Ward area.
Well, certainly the damage is incredible. You are looking just at a small amount of the destruction. It will take years and millions of dollars to clean up. Damage reports slow to come in tonight. Why? Weather-wise? Because the weather instrumentation in Louisiana and Mississippi was knocked out.
And here's the latest information coming out of New Orleans tonight.
You know, hundreds of thousands of people in southeastern Louisiana still without power. Could take up to a month before electricity is restored to everyone. There has been extensive damage in buildings in New Orleans, including holes in the roof at the Superdome, and 20 building collapse. That's the reports we have so far. And the levee in the St. Bernard Orleans parish is broken as well. 40,000 homes left flooded. No word yet on when they may be repaired.
And let's give you the latest about it. Again, no doubt about it, this hurricane was a strong one when it came on shore, but it actually made landfall 3 times. Its third landfall at 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time today around the Louisiana-Mississippi border. Now, this is just towards the east of New Orleans, so while it was bad there, we were spared the absolute worst of the storm, but not everyone was spared the worst. Alexandra?
Certainly was not. You know, tonight our live team coverage, of course, includes Mike Seidel in Mobile, Alabama. Stephanie Abrams live in Fort Walton Beach. But Mike, let's start with you again tonight. In Mobile, flooding, a huge scenario. But that water receding, isn't it?
It is tonight, Alexandra. To be expected, the strong onshore component of the wind has backed off, so the water is finally backing off. Earlier today, it was way, way up there. We've been showing you pictures of how deep it was. It was up to 8 feet deep. We can give you an idea, give you a measuring stick here. There's the interstate sign there, 10, big interstate across the south, and I-165 in Mobile, and it was right up to the arrow, just below 165. So it's dropped off looks like about 3 or 4 feet at this point, but there's still a lot of water, a lot of debris in the water, and you've got to watch this stuff here. This almost got me earlier. Corrugated aluminum. This has been blown off buildings all over downtown Mobile, and again, luckily the wind has backed off, so it's not a flying missile. Let's go back to the height of the storm. The wind and the rain here in Mobile County has knocked out power to just about everybody in the county, 200,000 homes. We were raked today from mid-morning to mid-afternoon with gusts as high as 90 miles an hour. And Paul and Alexandra mentioning how the instrumentation was knocked out. Well, the downtown Mobile airport had a peak gust, I believe, about 84 miles an hour. But after about 10 or 11 o'clock, no more wind observations. So we don't know if it was a power issue. Could have been a power issue, or maybe the anemometer was just blown to smithereens. We don't know at this point. But again, the water's receding. It may take as much as 2 weeks to get all the power back on. And remember, temperatures here will be back in the mid-90s with a lot of humidity the day after tomorrow. Let's go over to Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Certainly not nearly the structural damage, less wind, but the beaches have been eaten up again. Here's meteorologist Stephanie Abrams.
All right, thanks, Mike. And of course, we rode out the storm with several residents here from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. They all evacuated here to Fort Walton Beach. And of course, they're going to go home to just complete and utter devastation to many of their homes. But here along the Emerald Coast, we fared pretty well.
While the Florida Panhandle escaped a major hit from Hurricane Katrina, they still got some significant surge and flooding. Highway 98 between Fort Walton and Destin was closed due to waves and water coming in from the Gulf.
Opal washed it out, Ivan washed it out, and Dennis washed it out, and we were hoping it would survive this time. So far, it looks pretty good. I just hope it stays that way because that's the main thoroughfare from Fort Walton to Destin, and it really creates problems when it's closed.
There was also minor wind damage in the area, and one Navarre homeowner woke up to an unexpected surprise.
And I got to looking out here at about 3:45 and saw lights. And I got to look a little closer, something's out there. So we got the flashlight, and I walked downstairs to open the door and realized we had about a 50-foot boat up against our dock.
Now here in Fort Walton Beach, fortunately some places have these sand dunes. This one's about 15 feet high, and that actually stops some of the water, and the water here has actually gone down a bit. As a matter of fact, it was coming right up to these sand dunes, but as you can see, it's not doing that any longer. And where they don't have those sand dunes, you guys, the water just goes right onto the streets there, and that definitely causes a problem. So these sand dunes actually work, which is good news.
Stephanie, earlier we saw you talking to people who evacuated from further west of there and riding out the storm there. Did you talk to anyone who probably had a change of heart and wished they would have stayed where they were and rode out this storm?
No, absolutely not. I mean, 100% absolutely not. And I asked them, how do you feel about your friends and family that stayed? And they say they're unhappy with that. And they said their prayers before they left. And some people have gotten back in contact with their friends and families, and others still have not been able to reach them.
You know, certainly a good lesson in when you're told to leave, be it mandatory or not, you should leave. You know, lots of times, though, these storms really haven't done much in the end, and then people said, well, we're not going to leave, and then they don't leave again, and then there's a storm like this one.
And here's the thing, New Orleans, we've been dodging bullets for years and years and years. This one, I think we've been grazed. It wasn't a direct hit, and it's bad right now, really bad. But here's the thing, it could have been worse.
Absolutely. All right, more on Tropical Storm now, Katrina. Just some of the damage, fires in Louisiana. We'll talk about where this is coming up.